Why is your life still a mess, even when you're trying your best? You make to-do lists. You set goals. You swear this week will be different. But the days keep slipping away, lost in distractions, undone plans, and a constant sense of chaos. The Stoics would say, that's not an accident. That's a failure of design. There's nothing less stoic than disorganization, Ryan Holiday reminds us. Because a life without structure is a life surrendered to impulse. Seneca once wrote, life without design is erratic. The wise don't wing it. They build routines, create systems, and commit to practices, not to restrict themselves, but to free their minds for what truly matters. In this video, we'll explore how ancient Stoic philosophers designed their days, how they structured their mornings, sharpened their minds, disciplined their bodies, and guarded their time. You'll learn 13 practical habits and principles you can apply right now to bring more clarity, purpose, and peace into your daily life. But don't just watch. Reflect. Ask yourself, what if the chaos outside is just a reflection of the chaos within? And what if you could change both, starting today? Before the world wakes up, before the notifications, the noise, the emails, and expectations, there's a sacred space. The Stoics believed that how you enter the day determines how you live it. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, struggled like the rest of us to get out of bed. In Meditations, he wrote a quiet but powerful debate with himself. Is this what you were created for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm? He could have indulged. He was emperor, after all. But instead, he rose. Every morning. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. Because discipline at dawn was a declaration of intent. I am here to live, not to linger. We all know that feeling. Waking up already behind, already overwhelmed. Hitting snooze becomes a habit, and so does regret. But imagine a different version of your morning. One where you rise before the noise, focus before the distractions, and act with intention before the world acts upon you. The Stoic path begins in the first hour. Get up early. Face the discomfort. Attack the day. Not because it's easy, but because it builds momentum. Because doing the hard thing first makes everything else seem lighter by comparison. As Ryan Holiday puts it, win the morning, win the day, win at life. There's wisdom in that rhythm. Discipline before distraction. Courage before comfort. Action before anxiety. So tomorrow morning, before you scroll, before you speak, ask yourself, will I begin like a Stoic or drift like a slave to impulse? Of course, getting up early is only half the battle. The Stoics didn't just rise, they reflected. They didn't rush into the day blindly. They journaled. They wrote. They asked tough questions. Because clarity doesn't happen by accident, it's cultivated. Let's explore how journaling became one of the most powerful daily tools in the Stoic arsenal. In a world full of noise, journaling is how the Stoics carved out silence. It wasn't just a habit, it was a ritual, a form of spiritual hygiene, a way to clear the fog of life and see things as they are. Marcus Aurelius didn't write Meditations to publish a book. He wrote to remind himself of what mattered, to untangle thoughts, to practice philosophy, to become better. As Foucault put it, journaling is a weapon for spiritual combat. And in many ways, it still is. We're constantly overwhelmed by choices, emotions, distractions. Writing gives you a place to pause, to ask, where am I lying to myself? What am I afraid of? What blessings am I ignoring? Why do I care so much about things that don't matter? Seneca journaled in the evenings. He would sit in silence, retrace the steps of his day, and judge his actions like a wise friend. He said, I hide nothing from myself, and I pass nothing by. That self-honesty, done daily, became a source of peace. He even noted, the sleep which follows self-examination is particularly sweet. And it's not just the ancients. And Frank wrote that paper is more patient than people. Da Vinci carried notebooks with him constantly. Modern creatives, generals, philosophers, they all return to the page. Because the page doesn't judge, it reveals. Journaling is where clarity begins. It's how you build a relationship with your inner self. It's where philosophy becomes practice, where theory is tested and emotions are met with understanding. So start, every day, morning or night, for 5 minutes or 50. Write like no one will read it. Ask hard questions. Tell the truth. Because the person who understands themselves is the person who can master their life. But journaling was never meant to stand alone. For the Stoics, the page was a mirror, but books were a doorway. They read constantly, not to impress others, but to engage in conversation with the dead, to sharpen the mind, as they discipline the soul. In the next part, let's explore why reading is a non-negotiable practice in a Stoic life. The Stoics believed that death ends a life, but not a conversation. Reading to them wasn't passive consumption, it was communion. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, once visited the Oracle of Delphi and received a mysterious prophecy. You will become wise when you begin to have conversations with the dead. Years later, in a dusty bookstore in Athens, he heard someone reciting the dialogues of Socrates, and it struck him. Books are voices from the beyond. To read is to sit at the feet of the masters, to learn from lives already lived, mistakes already made, and wisdom already earned, without paying the full price yourself. Seneca urged us not just to read, but to reread, to linger on timeless words, to choose depth over novelty. You don't read Marcus Aurelius once. You return to him like an old friend when life turns heavy or unclear. You pick up Meditations not to finish it, but to be changed by it. There's a reason soldiers, artists, thinkers, and leaders, like Theodore Roosevelt or General James Mattis, kept Stoic texts close. Because life is war and wisdom is armor. Mattis put it bluntly, if you haven't read hundreds of books, you are functionally illiterate. Why? Because he knew that trial and error is the most expensive teacher. Better to borrow wisdom than bleed for it. But the Stoics also warned, don't read just to look smart. Don't worship obscurity. Epictetus mocked students who bragged about reading dense, unreadable philosophers. He said, if they had written better, you'd have less to brag about. So read, but read to grow. Read to live. Let the ideas seep into your actions. Journal what moves you. Question what unsettles you. Let the dead speak, and let their words shape the way you walk through the world. Because in a distracted age, attention is power, and to sit still with a good book is a revolutionary act. But the Stoics didn't just feed the mind. They trained the body too. For them, wisdom without strength was incomplete. You'll see next how physical discipline was not an optional part of Stoic life. It was essential. We tend to imagine philosophers as fragile men, frail, cloaked in robes, lost in thought. But the Stoics? They were built different. They believed that a weak body makes for a distracted soul. Marcus Aurelius wasn't just Rome's most powerful emperor. He was also a soldier who hunted, wrestled, endured harsh winters. Seneca? He took cold plunges daily, walked for hours, and was so self-sufficient that even Emperor Nero's assassins struggled to poison him, because he foraged his own food. Why such physical rigor? Because they knew the truth. You cannot master the mind if the body constantly rebels. Musonius Rufus, Epictetus's teacher, said it plainly. The philosopher's body should be well prepared for physical activity, for the virtues often need it as a tool. Courage, resilience, discipline, these aren't just thoughts. They are practices, and the body is where they're forged. When Theodore Roosevelt was a sickly, nearsighted child, his father gave him a harsh truth. You have the mind, but not the body. Roosevelt didn't complain. He said, then I shall make my body. He became a boxer, a rough rider, a relentless explorer. Even as president, he squeezed hours of exercise into his daily routine. And what book did he carry deep into the Amazon? Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. That's no coincidence. The Stoic doesn't hide from discomfort. They embrace it. Cold, heat, fatigue, hunger, they aren't obstacles, they're opportunities. To harden the vessel, to silence the excuses, to become a person who can endure. Seneca wrote, "Train the body rigorously so that it may not be disobedient to the mind." So move, push yourself, sweat, walk, swim, lift, climb, not for vanity, not for metrics, but because discipline in motion builds resilience in thought. In an age of comfort and digital ease, the Stoic path is physical. The mind is sharpest when the body is strong. And yet, even the strongest body and the sharpest mind are no match for the quiet destroyer of dreams, procrastination. In the next section, we'll uncover how the Stoics declared war on delay, and why "I'll do it tomorrow" is the most dangerous lie we tell ourselves. We all do it. We say we'll start tomorrow. We wait for the perfect time, the perfect plan, the perfect version of ourselves to magically appear. But here's what the Stoics knew, long before productivity gurus gave it a name. Procrastination isn't laziness. It's arrogance. Seneca put it sharply. Putting things off is the greatest waste of life. It snatches away each day by promising a tomorrow. And Marcus Aurelius warned, you could be good today, but instead you choose tomorrow. When you delay what matters, you're betting your life on a day that may never come. You're assuming the universe owes you more time. That's not just foolish, it's fatal. The Stoic doesn't wait. If something is worth doing, they do it now. They don't let fear, perfectionism, or mood decide for them. Because later is a myth. Ready is a lie. Only now is real. And it's not just about goals, it's about identity. Every time you delay action, you reinforce a belief. I am not the kind of person who follows through. But each time you act, no matter how small, you send a different message. I am a person of discipline. I do what must be done. You don't need a perfect morning. You don't need a 12-step plan. You need to act, even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect, even if it's uncomfortable. Seneca reminds us, the whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. So stop saying you'll begin soon. You're already in it. This is life. Don't waste another moment watching it pass. But doing less procrastination doesn't mean doing more random things. The Stoics believed in essentialism, not minimalism for aesthetics, but for clarity. Up next, we explore why doing less better is one of Marcus Aurelius's greatest teachings for a focused, tranquil life. We live in a world that worships busyness. Our calendars are packed. Our to-do lists never end. We scroll endlessly, multitask proudly, and wear exhaustion like a badge of honor. But Marcus Aurelius saw through the madness. He wrote, "If you seek tranquility, do less. Not nothing, just less of what doesn't matter." This wasn't laziness. It was clarity. He followed with a crucial question. Is this essential? Because when you strip life down to what truly matters, two things happen. You suffer less, and you do what matters far better. The Stoic doesn't fear saying no. They don't say yes out of guilt, habit, or the fear of seeming rude. They understand that life is short, and every yes to the inessential is a no to the meaningful. So ask yourself, how much of what you do each day is truly aligned with your values? How much of it is noise, obligation, distraction, vanity? Seneca wrote, "We are tight-fisted with property and money, yet think too little of wasting time." But time is your only non-renewable asset. Every minute you give to what doesn't matter is a theft from what does. The Stoic aims for fewer arrows with more force behind each. So eliminate, prioritize, edit your life ruthlessly. Because peace doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing less, but doing it deeply and with your whole heart. But clarity on the inside often starts with order on the outside. The Stoics understood that chaos in your environment creates chaos in your mind. Let's now turn to how outer simplicity leads to inner serenity, and why organizing your space is far more powerful than you think. Ever notice how a messy room makes your thoughts feel messy too? That's no accident. The Stoics knew long ago what modern psychology confirms today. Your environment shapes your mind. Gretchen Rubin said it best: outer order contributes to inner calm. And Ryan Holiday echoes it when he says, "When I feel behind, I look at my desk, and I understand why." The chaos out there is often a reflection of the chaos in here. Stoicism teaches that life is unpredictable, full of turmoil. But it also teaches this: to plunge yourself needlessly into disorder is a kind of self-inflicted suffering. That's why the Stoics valued cosmos, a Greek word meaning order, elegance, structure. It wasn't about obsessing over control. It was about creating a sanctuary for the mind to operate clearly. Think about your space right now. Is your desk cluttered with unread notes? Is your digital desktop drowning in files? Does your phone scream for attention with every buzz and ping? These aren't just inconveniences. They're leaks in your attention, open tabs in your brain. The Stoic understands this. They create systems not just to get organized, but to protect their peace. They simplify, they automate, they clean, not out of vanity, but as a form of spiritual maintenance. Because when everything in your life requires effort, when every action depends on willpower, you will burn out. So start simple. Clear one surface. Archive one inbox. Silence one source of noise. And feel the mind begin to breathe again. But what good is a clean space if your mind is constantly invaded by others? The Stoics didn't just clean their homes. They guarded their inner world. Up next, the power of boundaries, and why protecting your peace is not selfish, but essential. You can have a clean desk, a clear schedule, and a structured routine. But if you let everyone and everything have access to your mind, you're still at the mercy of chaos. That's why the Stoics mastered the art of boundaries, not walls of ego, but filters of peace. Marcus Aurelius opens Book 2 of Meditations with a hard truth. Today I will meet the meddling, the arrogant, the dishonest, the envious. But he doesn't stop there. He adds, but none of them can hurt me. Why? Because his soul is off limits. Boundaries are how we decide what enters that space and what stays out. We live in an era of oversharing, outrage, and endless emotional entanglement. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants access. Everyone is broadcasting noise. The Stoic? They remain inwardly still, even if the world is on fire. They don't post every thought. They don't reply to every jab. They don't absorb every drama, because they understand not everything deserves a reaction. Seneca once wrote from a noisy apartment in chaotic Rome, trying to work amidst shouting, hammering, and distraction. His response? He turned inward. He said, "A wise man is safe within himself." That's what the Stoics called the inner citadel, a fortress of clarity where the world can knock, but never enter unless invited. So draw the line. Turn off the alerts. Say no without apology. Keep your private life private. Peace is not a given. It's protected. And yet, protecting peace doesn't mean clinging to control. Life changes. Seasons shift. Rigidity can become fragility. That's why the Stoics embraced adaptability, the art of bending without breaking. Let's explore what it means to be disciplined, but fluid. Discipline is not rigidity. Structure is not stubbornness. And a Stoic is not a statue. Life changes. The seasons shift. Children are born, jobs disappear, pandemics erupt, relationships evolve. The Stoic doesn't resist change, they train for it. Marcus Aurelius put it best: The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing. Stay on your feet, be ready for the unexpected. And when life throws a punch, he doesn't flinch. He says, "Yes, this is exactly what I was looking for." This is the paradox of Stoicism. Its strength comes not from force, but from flow. Yes, you wake early. Yes, you journal, read, exercise, protect your space. But the form of those practices? It can change. It must change. Robert Greene, a modern philosopher, called this the most stoic law of power, formlessness. Not shapeless chaos, but strategic flexibility. You hold tight to principles, but let go of attachment to how they must look. Too rigid, and you snap. Too fluid, and you lose structure. The Stoic lives in the tension between those two poles, and thrives there. Cato, a legendary Stoic, refused to bend even slightly. He stood for principle, but died politically ineffective. Epictetus, in contrast, said, "Don't ask me what to do. Ask me to help make you adaptable." So maybe your routine breaks. Maybe your plan unravels. Maybe life moves faster than you can follow. That's okay. If you know your why, you can always reshape your how. Adaptability is not compromise. It's wisdom in motion. But even adaptability means little if we forget this one brutal truth. We are running out of time. The Stoics kept death close, not to fear it, but to stay awake. In the next section, we'll explore why Memento Mori isn't morbid, it's motivating. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Marcus Aurelius didn't write that as poetry. He meant it as a wake-up call. The Stoics believed in staring death in the face, not as a way to be dark, but to be fully alive. Seneca took it even further. He said, "Don't think of death as something in the future. The time that passes belongs to death." Let that sink in. Every minute you waste, every hour you spend on things that don't matter, that's death claiming its toll. You're not walking toward death. You're already giving pieces of life away. That's why the Stoics didn't wait. They didn't waste time on trivial fights, hollow ambitions, or things done to impress strangers. They lived with urgency, not panic, but presence. Memento Mori means, remember you must die. Not to depress you, but to clarify your vision. To ask yourself, today, not someday, if this were my last day alive, would I be proud of how I spent it? Would I still say yes to this meeting, this habit, this distraction, this silence? We scroll past hours like they're infinite. We postpone dreams like time is on layaway. But the Stoic knows the clock is ticking, and the cost is everything. So choose with care. Speak with honesty. Love with urgency. Act with courage. Memento Mori isn't about dying. It's about finally living. In the next section, we'll explore why systems over willpower isn't morbid, it's motivating. Discipline will fail you, eventually. Willpower runs out. Motivation wavers. Moods shift like the wind. The Stoics understood this long before we had words like decision fatigue or dopamine detox. They knew that a life worth living couldn't depend on how you feel each day. It had to be designed. Seneca warned us not to trust raw effort alone. He wrote, "No person can maintain effort and attention indefinitely. You must build the structure that holds you up when your strength fades." That's why the Stoics created rhythms. Marcus had his mornings. Seneca had his evening reviews. Epictetus laid out rules for students to follow each day, not because the rules were sacred, but because the system kept them close to their ideals. Today, we often try to brute force everything. We say we'll stop procrastinating, get in shape, wake up early. But without a system, those intentions crumble under the weight of temptation and exhaustion. Systems are the bridge between intention and action. They remove friction. They reduce choice. They make the good thing easier and the wrong thing harder. That might mean preparing your clothes the night before, blocking time for focused work, turning off notifications by default, journaling at the same time each night. These aren't glamorous habits, but they protect your values from the volatility of your emotions. Because the Stoic doesn't rely on feeling inspired. They rely on what they've already built. But systems alone don't make a good life. They're tools. What gives them power is alignment, the harmony between who you say you are and how you live. That's what we'll explore next, the Stoic art of living in integrity. To be at peace with yourself, you must stop lying to yourself. We all feel the tension between what we say and what we do, between the values we post and the choices we make in private. That tension, it's not just guilt, it's spiritual dissonance. The Stoics had a word for the cure: integrity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That wasn't just a call to action. It was a plea for alignment. Because when your actions betray your beliefs, you create chaos inside, even if everything looks organized on the outside. The Stoic doesn't chase perfection. They chase consistency. They don't preach values they don't practice. They don't show one face in public and another in private. They don't trade truth for likes or peace for approval. Seneca warned, "A person who travels everywhere but lives nowhere is a drifter." The same is true for character. If your values change with the room, the crowd, the mood, then who are you really? To live aligned is to move through life with one face, one truth, one compass. It's hard. It costs you popularity. It costs you convenience. But it gives you something far more valuable: clarity, credibility, and self-respect. Because in the end, the most organized life means nothing if your soul is in disorder. And yet, even alignment, like systems, discipline, or clarity, is meaningless without consistency. The Stoics knew greatness doesn't come from what you do occasionally, but from what you show up for every day. Let's close with the final principle, the quiet, relentless power of showing up. You don't need to be brilliant. You don't need to be bold. But you do need to be there, every day. The Stoics weren't obsessed with big wins. They believed in the sacred power of daily effort, the quiet repetition of right action, regardless of recognition, regardless of outcome. Epictetus said it clearly. First, say to yourself what you would be. Then, do what you must. Do it when you're tired. Do it when no one's watching. Do it when it feels pointless. Because the truth is, the work is never wasted. Marcus Aurelius journaled daily, not to impress, but to stay centered. Seneca reflected nightly, not to perform, but to improve. They showed up, not when they felt like it, but because their identity demanded it. Consistency isn't glamorous. It's not always inspiring, but it's how legacies are built. It's how strength is forged, and it's how peace becomes permanent. The Stoic shows up like the sun, reliable, steady, humble. No announcement, no applause, just light, every single day. And now you've seen what it means to organize your life like a Stoic, not through hacks or hustle, but through principles that anchor the soul and discipline the body. But these aren't ideas to admire. They're habits to embody. You've just walked through 13 timeless principles. Not productivity hacks, not life coach jargon, but a philosophy of structure forged in war, exile, and the deepest corners of the human soul. Wake early, write honestly, read with intention, move your body, protect your peace, face death, show up. These aren't trends, they're truths, and they are waiting, not to be admired, but to be applied. The Stoics didn't live by theory. They lived by practice. They stumbled. They failed. They doubted. But they returned daily to the work. So if your life feels chaotic, if your goals feel distant, if your mind feels loud, then maybe it's not motivation you lack, but structure. And maybe it's time to stop winging it and start building something sacred. You don't need to do all 13 at once. Start with one. Practice it like a vow. And then, just keep showing up. Because the Stoic life isn't lived in grand gestures. It's built one quiet, deliberate choice at a time. If this video stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Tell us in the comments, which principle are you committing to today? And if you know someone whose life feels messy, chaotic, or lost in distractions, share this with them. It might just be the order they've been searching for. Subscribe for more Stoic wisdom, deep insights, and the tools to help you live not just better, but truer. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Now go, live deliberately.